Okay, we're going to look at investigation 2.2 and let's be rational. Go ahead and highlight your focus question. What strategies can you use to multiply all combination of factors including whole numbers, fractions, and mixed numbers? We looked at one strategy back here in lesson 2.1 where if you have a whole number and a mixed number, you can multiply the two whole numbers and then the whole number and the mixed number. That was one strategy, but we can look at some more in this one. So we are on page 17 in our workbook and page 33 in our textbook. All right, so you've used of and multiplication statements with whole numbers. For example, two groups of 12. You've written number sentences such as 3/4 of a half. And then we've come down here. This is like the one I just showed you, 2.5 groups of 12. So you did the 2 times the 12, and then you did the half times the 12, which is just like the example I did in 2.1. Today we're going to take that step a little bit further as we look at estimating, drawing models, and writing number sentences with whole numbers, fractions, and mixed numbers. So right now you are only going to work on A with your group, and then we are going to reconnect and go over the answers. So go ahead and work on A only with your group. Pause. All right, let's look at A. A recipe calls for 2/3 of a 16-ounce bag of chocolate chips. How many ounces are needed? So again, the first thing I want you to do is estimate. So some of you may have rounded 2/3 to a half, and a half times 16 is 8. That would be an estimate. Some of you probably looked at 2/3 and said, well, 16 divided by 3 is about 5. And since we need to have 2 of them, that would be 10. So a good estimate, I would say, would be 10. I think that's probably a little more precise. Next it says they want a model or diagram. So if I were to come over here and make a 16 box, which would be a 4x4. So this represents the 16. I need to find 2/3 of the 16. So what I'm going to do is color in out of every 3 boxes, I'm going to color 2 of them in. So if I just look at the top row, there's 2 out of 3. Now I've got 4 of them down here. Here's 3. I'll color these in. And I got this 1 left over. So what I'm going to have to do is divide it into thirds and shade in 2/3 of it. So for my exact answer, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 2/3. So for my number sentence, I'm going to write 2/3 of 16 is 10 and 2/3. Mr. Flasberg buys 2.5-pound block of cheese. His family eats 1/3 of the block. How much cheese has Mr. Flasberg's family eaten? So we're going to visualize this. Here is there's a pound of cheese. There's another pound of cheese. And here is a 1/2 pound of cheese. And I'm going to just do dotted to show that it's a half. Okay. So if I'm going to estimate, I look at this and say, well, this is, if I were to take 1/3 of this, it would be 1/3 of a pound and another 1/3 of a pound. And what would this one represent? 1/3 of this half would be 1/6. So I look at it and I say, well, 1/3 and 1/3 is 2/3. I need a whole nother third to get to 1. I don't have enough to get to 1. So I know that my estimate should be between 2/3 and a whole. So maybe you pick something that's between 2/3 and a whole, or you can actually say between 2/3 and 1 as your estimate. And then it wants a model. Well, here's my model, but it wants me to actually come up with an answer. So here we've got 1/3, here we've got 1/3, and we decided that this little piece here, it actually only represents 1/6 because it's 1/3 of the half. So this is 1/6. And if I need to find my total, that basically means we're adding. And we can't add fractions with the different denominators, so we need to rename these so they have the same denominators. And what is 2/6 plus 2/6 plus 1/6? That is going to be 5/6 of a pound. Malik and Aaron run the corn harvester for Mr. Avery. Malik and Aaron harvest 2 1/3 acres worth of corn each day. They only have 10 1/2 days to harvest the corn. How many acres worth of corn can they harvest for Mr. Avery? All right, so it wants an estimate. So I'm gonna round 2 1/3, even though it should round to 2 1/2. I'm gonna round to 2 because we're trying to estimate, and if we have two mixed numbers, that's gonna make it very difficult to estimate. So 2 1/3 is pretty close to 2. And then 10 1/2, I'm gonna go ahead and round up to 11 because that's the closest whole number. And so I would say that my estimate would be 22 acres because about 2 a day for about 11 days. Next, we're not gonna worry about drawing a model for that one. Write a number sentence and solve. Okay, so we have 2 1/3 times 10 1/2. So we have 2 1/3 acres every day for 10 1/2 days. So what we've talked about is that we can't multiply mixed numbers. We need to change them to improper fractions. So 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So 7/3, because the denominator stays the same, times 10 1/3. So 2 times 10 is 20, plus 1 is 21 halves. Boy, these are some big numbers. But there is a little trick. You can look at let me rewrite these up and down so that make it a little easier for you to understand. 7/3 and 21 halves. You can look at the diagonals, and if you can reduce before you multiply to make your life a little easier. So I can say that 3 and 21, 3 goes into both of these. So I'm going to divide them both by 3 before I multiply, and it makes it way easier. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 21 divided by 3 is 7. So now I have 7 times 7 is 49 over 1 times 2 is 2. If you don't know how to reduce diagonally, don't worry about it. You can still get the right answer by doing it the other way. So you have 49 over 2. So hopefully everyone in here knows how to simplify an improper fraction. 49 divided by 2 is 24 with a remainder of 1, and the denominator stays the same. So 24 1/2 acres. All right, if there is time left in class, you may start your homework. You do not need to do B. We will do B as a warm-up on Friday. So if you've gotten to here, you are done, and you may start your homework. See you Friday.